controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are a science here to make things make sense.
What does a straight man playing golf say right when before they hit the ball or after they hit the ball?
Like foreskin?
Foreskin.
Wow, did you just make that up now?
Yeah, I would hope. Hopefully I wasn't thinking about that for weeks.
I wouldn't be surprised. No, you're
Oh my
natural
God, we're
comedian.
fighting again.
Okay. Yeah, no, we're constantly fighting.
What's happening? You have to take control and be nice to me. I'm in bad mood. Because guess what? I'm circumcised. Damn it. I feel like I didn't give enough.
A lot on this podcast, so...
Wow, I feel like I just said one and it was like such bad timing.
Why? Because I
it's
spoke?
Like we started over. Yeah, and I'm just like, that was supposed to be my big reveal. And now
no, okay. Obviously, we're going to talk about circumcision and foreskin and whatever. Where do you want to begin? We both are circumcised.
Yeah, well, do you know what I mean? Like we really built that up and then we just kind of said it.
Well, because it feels weird to make a big deal about it.
We're circumcised!
Most of the world is not, but most of North America is. But I think that's changing, especially even in Canada. Like I think over time, more and more people do see it as kind of like mutilation of a child without consent.
Oh my God.
Like, well, because there's general mutilation of women across the world that we like advocate strongly for to stop, obviously. And so that's a form of like, I mean, perhaps there's been justifications for it in the past about like whether it helps with cleanliness or disease prevention, but that we can talk about that today, whether that is accurate at all. So, and if it's not, is there any justified reason to do it?
Yes.
Like functional or health wise.
So it is a practice, cutting off the, what is it? Prepuce?
Yeah, the prepuce. I honestly like have only heard a computer say it, like type that. So that is technically the term for foreskin.
The
skin, scientific medical term. The prepuce.
Around the glands and just like, it's just not a hot word to be like, yeah, pull back my prepuce. But
I mean, neither is foreskin, to be honest.
Actually, yeah.
But we have to watch our own bias because when you grow up without one, I think a lot of there's like a lot of conversation in North America, even like in straight culture. I've seen like memes where people talk about it online where like some straight women will be like, you have to be circumcised because there's like this image of like, ooh, it's gross if it's not in North America. But
I feel the opposite.
In so many other countries, obviously that's just like what you expect. People just get used to what is common.
I see the physical preference.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's good.
And the sort of narratives that like evolve around one being unclean or one being, people aren't used to seeing a certain kind. Like even in media, I felt like growing up, not that I was like looking at so many dicks, but I did go to a Catholic school and we had this book called Fully Alive, and even the cartoon penises in our sex ed were all circumcised.
I didn't even know the Catholics even got sex ed.
I know, but we would all get so horned up from that one page. If you know, you know.
Also, Fully Alive is the name of the sex education. The Catholic school board needs to be abolished. That's another episode.
Well, yeah, that's but it's not just a sex ed book. It's like a family life and relationships.
Oh, yeah, I can only imagine what they're trying to say.
Oh, I know.
Fully Alive.
It's but I mean, you get it from like there's a different book every year. So as you get older, they introduce concepts of like body, learning about private parts and stuff. We don't say it out loud.
I love that. Private parts.
The penis.
Okay, this is a great episode to think about. The Catholic school upbringing. I'm so curious about your like scientific and sex education.
Sure, yeah, it's basically zero. I can tell you.
That's insane.
No, the science one's not true. Like in high school, we can save it for that episode, but I'll give you a preview. Obviously, in high school, that's where I like fell in love with science and had science teachers, biology, chemistry, physics, general science when you're younger. So, like, religion doesn't play a role. I was not religious. None of my friends were religious. We were just at a Catholic school. And I think a lot of the teachers were, I think you had to be Catholic or identify, like you had to have a priest give you a reference to, and I think you still do to teach at the Catholic school.
Yeah, you do.
But a lot of people are like fairly secular.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I went to a crazy religious school.
Yeah. But it is interesting. And even like thinking about like male circumcision and foreskin, it's like, the main reason people have been doing it for thousands of years is like religion and cultural practices.
Totally, yeah.
Although apparently in the 1800s, if you picture like England and like the colonial mayhem that country decided to do, English speaking parts of the world, they started to circumcise the men to decrease sexual arousal to hopefully control masturbation.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
really?
that's like what a lot of historical
Didn't
texts
work.
say. Yeah, I was like, that's insane. But there is some scientific evidence that it does make you feel less sexually aroused, in the sense that in the foreskin is where so many of the nerves are that are in like the tips of your fingers or your lips, for example. There's the same nerves that are then being cut off your body.
And it's not like, it obviously it's dumb in a lot of ways. If that's what they're going for, but it's not as dumb as when they were like, well, you got to eat cornflakes if you're gay, because that's how you stop someone from being gay.
What?
Isn't
Who
there like
said
there's like some famous guy who was like a homophobe and created like
Joe Rogan?
No, like what do you call like where people have to transition from being gay? What's that called? Conversion
therapy. You just eat cornflakes.
No,
That's when you know they
okay.
were running
I
out of
gotta look up
ideas.
this. No, exactly. I'm like, that person was
And also,
gay.
piece
just like
of
cornflakes.
cake. Like if that's all it took,
Cornflakes gay. I have to.
it's gonna be like Kellogg's.
Oh, it's
Pride
literally
campaign.
Kellogg's anti. Let's see this. I'm just clicking on a random website, but I've heard this before. Cornflakes were part of John Harvey Kellogg's anti-masturbation crusade. So similar.
Whoa.
But I think it somehow ties into anti-homophobia as well. Or no, into homophobia. Okay, let's come back to foreskin.
Well, that kind of was related in the sense that back in the day, they were trying to curb masturbation somehow, and circumcision became a big part of that outside of religious practices in like the 1800s. Then it was the 1960s when the science community started to question, like, why are we
If it
doing
was
this?
worth doing, or if it was legitimate. In
Yeah.
the 60s, okay.
In the 1960s. And actually, from that point forward, from 1979 to 2010, circumcision rates in hospitals in America dropped from 64.5% to 58.3%. So it was
Which
sort
isn't
of like
that huge of a drop.
no, but it still is
like showed a
over
significant
time
change. Yeah.
saying that like the science community kind of stepped in and was like, it's not curbing masturbation.
Right.
Why exactly are we sort of like innately in America and Canada? This is a very North American thing, like just doing this and not thinking
Right.
about it.
Unquestionably just doing it like the instant a child is born.
Yeah. So like say in 2010, 58.3% of people in in hospitals after being born with a penis were getting circumcised. Around the world, although this was not 2010, this was 2015, 33% of males are estimated to be circumcised.
Okay.
So as you said, worldwide it is much less common than in America.
Right.
Which is
Yeah,
so
I think it's
weird.
even a little less common in Canada, but not like probably on the same. It probably is like 50-50-ish.
Okay, so
In my personal experience.
whore,
kidding.
Oh God, man.
And my sample size of 4.
You've only seen 4 dicks?
Yeah.
That is an absolute lie. And a
I'm so
half. Like,
innocent.
oh my God, I'm in such a bad mood. I'm like so mad that you sent that. I'm like,
Yours is certainly above
you
400.
have not only seen 4 dicks. I'm so mad. 2 circumcised, 2 not. I'm gonna
50-50. Oh my God, why are you so angry
I don't know because I'm like, you're lying today.
It was just a little tricksy joke, okay?
I know I have a serious mental problem right now. I'm like, I cannot stand my right.
For once in your damn life, you're suffering, okay? Maybe we should actually embrace this.
But okay, this is just me personally. I'm like, I have a penis that is cut, as they say, circumcised. I would never do that to my kid.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And not to say that anyone did anything wrong to me. What I think about is like when like my sister having her kids or my friends having kids. I'm like, you're telling me that fresh newborn baby that you're so like trying to protect, that is so vulnerable and so sweet and so cute. And like also you're a new parent, you don't even know what to do. Like the last thing I think you would want to do is cut it.
I mean, you just wouldn't think about it in the past, right? If the doctor told you, oh, this is like a common, it helps.
So that's
keep
what I'm saying.
clean
So
as they
are
grow
the
old,
doctors
that-
saying that?
I
Because
think-
that's really intense.
I think less so now, but I think that would have been what was the medically recommended advice in North America and Canada.
Okay,
Like,
no, I'm not trying. I'm trying to talk personally. So
Yeah,
ignore
oh.
anything. Would you do that? That's the thing. Like ignore
Now,
any being
I
told by a
wouldn't.
doctor. Right? Because doesn't it seem so weird?
obviously, you're like, why are you born with it then?
Yeah,
you
and-
know, it'd be like being like, oh, well, we're going to cut off his left arm. We're not going to say why. It's just like what we do. And you'd be
Yeah.
like, well,
Yeah,
don't you
well,
think if they're born with it, like they should probably have it?
I
you
mean,
okay?
I'm like, I definitely don't agree with that. Like being born with something doesn't mean you should have it.
If every single person is born with it,
Oh, I
don't you
see
think
what
that means that is probably natural and you should have it?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'm not trying
Yeah.
to say like there aren't some things that sometimes doctors do surgeries on because it's like a abnormality or something that
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
growth that is actually potentially dangerous. But like a foreskin is something that everyone has, not everyone, but everyone who has a penis has when they come
that
out of
is
the womb.
so weird.
That it is interesting. And I guess I can
It'd be fun to lie to people, be like, "Oh, actually, I was born cut." Oh yeah, actually born. Like, oh no, this is not.
It's an evolutionary advantage.
It's
No, I
also
mean,
not.
obviously, looking back in history, there were probably more legitimate reasons in terms of like why cultures chose to do it, or maybe not. Maybe they were completely random. I personally haven't looked into like the historical. I've been told stories in the past of like why an uncircumcised penis in some parts of the world may have helped keep it cleaner at those times in certain circumstances, and maybe that's part of the reason why certain cultures started it. But there's lots of religious practices that also just start for no specific reason other than traditional, like just creating traditions. So yeah, I don't know. And I think all of those myths have been busted, like especially in a place like Canada where you have access to, you can be hygienic, you have healthcare, you have education. Like I don't think any of our friends who are uncircumcised are like worried about being unclean unless
Yeah.
they're straight guys and they're just naturally unclean.
Okay, whoa.
No, I mean like, you know, when you're like, you don't
Yeah.
wash your butt.
No, sometimes
Okay.
I'm like, you
That's
just
gross.
have to clean. You just have to clean.
Have a shower like every now and then.
Okay, but then now I'm going to explain all the science that kind of like contradicts some of those things.
Oh, really?
Which
Okay.
is that, they did studies on adult circumcision. So men who were not circumcised, but then in adulthood got circumcised.
Okay.
And after circumcision, there was 81% less bacteria on their penis. Meaning essentially that like in general, when they were studying them for a year before and a year after, because it is really important that you clean more efficiently when you have foreskin because of the way, like literally the physicality of thine dick. And then because it's like a warm, moist environment, it can sort of like facilitate opportunities for pathogens to replicate, and that they do find significant studies where there are increases in gonorrhea, increases in syphilis, although the syphilis one was a very predominant study that was used often, and just last year it was like completely debunked. But HIV, they have found that there is an increase in HIV transmission in people who are circumcised.
Okay, so I'm going to contradict you now.
Oh my God, really?
Can I?
Yeah.
Brand new study, end of last year.
Okay, so now this is the ultimate, like, wow, I'm gonna.
No, it's true.
No, but you're right. You're like, that's good.
As doing research, like, of course,
That's good. That's I'm fine.
Come across, there's been a lot of conversations around HIV contraction in particular being higher in some places in like men who are who are not circumcised. Sorry. But this was the first study, I think, major study in like looking at Western countries and Ontario, Canada, where we live specifically. They looked at almost 600,000 males, a third of them were circumcised, and they found no significant difference in the risk of HIV between groups. And basically, though, it was like, obviously there's a difference when you can be like told, okay, if you are uncircumcised, maybe you do need to put a little more effort into just like being clean, being told and taught that how to clean it properly.
Pulling back the taut skin and giving a little wash.
And like, so what they said is like the results are consistent with clinical guidelines that emphasize safe sex practices and counseling over circumcision as an intervention to reduce the risk of HIV.
But the World Health Organization is not
Because-
usually talking about Ontario. They're
Exactly.
talking about places with high.
Totally. Most of those HIV higher rates of contraction studies are in like specific African countries. So like obviously there's rates in every country is going to have different issues, whether that's because of like who knows what reasons. But I think it is just important in this case. It's not just the fact that people are uncircumcised.
No,
There's
it's
probably
not.
other
No,
confounding
of
variables that are intertwined with that.
In fact, I am like
Still important to know.
I am so like I would never circumcise my kid now that I'm just trying to figure out what could possibly be a reason to. Because obviously people still do it outside of religious practices. And so I'm like, maybe they're reading those studies. Because there are studies out there, like if you're
doctors
trying to do research, essentially pointing you to the fact that the kid, for example, would have less risk of certain STIs. Like as much as that's been debunked in Ontario, across the world, and the World Health Organization sometimes does say this could be a helpful prevention for HIV transmission in places maybe not like Ontario.
Yeah, I think But maybe what this study is suggesting is like
It's something
using these
else.
populations, like maybe we can learn, okay, then what is it? Is it that we need to like better emphasize safe sex? Is
Yeah.
it that we need to better emphasize hygiene in certain
Totally.
instances?
I mean, that
how
is
can
so
we, because that's
true.
like a way less invasive
God.
way to prevent the spread of disease.
Also, now I'm writing we need to do an episode about PrEP.
oh yeah.
And for the
I'm surprised we
straights
never wrote that down.
listening, that is a pill that gay men take that lowers your ability to get HIV, but then it does increase sex without condoms, which does not protect you from the STIs we're talking
every
about.
other
from
STI,
your
yeah.
foreskin, like the gonorrhea. I mean, it does HIV, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I can't believe we've never thought about doing something about PrEP.
I thought we could have wrote that down or would have written that down.
And now I'm writing down beside Catholic school, prep school. Imagine.
And you put cars or bike lanes or
Cars is so like we're gonna be like, what does Cars mean?
Well-
the Incredible movie. Okay, but then also another sort of like, again, I just think it's weird to do. The reason why someone might do it, they did find that people, again, adult circumcision studies, people who had premature ejaculation after being adultly circumcised, whatever that word is, they were able to then, they had a tenfold increase in how long it took for them to ejaculate. So
Yeah.
it's sort of referencing the like lack of pleasure.
Yeah.
But for someone who's maybe struggling with premature ejaculation, it's like it could help because they're essentially just feeling less.
Yeah, this was like part of the interesting conversation, and I found some studies that were looking at its impact on sex and pleasure. Is that okay if I talk about that now?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's linked.
And so obviously there is different points that people get circumcised. Like lots of young people have it as soon as they're born. And sometimes there is like a certain percentage, I think it's like 1 or 2% that are medically necessary, both
Oh, wow.
as kids and then some as they get older. So some people get circumcised
Yes.
because it's either painful or too tight
Yeah,
or
some
there's
people
like
have
issues,
like
right?
foreskin that's too tight. Like I actually know people who have got adult circumcised for that, and I always think like that would have been so hard.
Yeah, totally.
No pun
And so that
intended.
can cause like, yeah, you can hurt yourself or like cause issues, obviously. And so some people decide later in life. Some people decide just aesthetically, even as adults, but there are some that are medically necessary. And so, so what the main studies have looked at is, yes, the foreskin has so many more neurons, like it's so much more sensitive. There's all these different kinds of extra sensory inputs, but I think overall they're still not sure if it changes your sexual response, in particular when you're younger. So
What?
like, so obviously you're saying, okay, an adult had a late life circumcision,
Yeah.
and was able to reduce the amount of time, or sorry, increase the amount of time it took to reach an orgasm to prevent premature ejaculation.
Yeah.
In my mind, that makes sense because they've actually gone from having something as an
see.
adult and being used to it. They're probably used to like how they masturbate and stuff or how they have sex, and then changing. But this is unclear. Like what I'm saying is how they talk about these studies in kids, or how it's more of like a discussion.
No, I
of,
get what you're saying
If you
now.
circumcise someone like the day they're born, perhaps their brain and body develop in a way that are able to become equally sexually aroused.
Brain
and
has lots of
pleasured.
plasticity.
Yeah, and whether or not the sensitivity and the amount of nerve endings in foreskin is specifically designed for pleasure is unclear.
Okay, that's also so interesting because the study about the people who would take longer to ejaculate was only like 6 months after the circumcision. And with brain plasticity, who knows that over years they might just learn how to then get back. Well, I mean,
True. Could get
in
to
this
that
case,
same
they're
point,
like
yeah.
wanting to be slow,
Right.
but might be like, oh, it's fast again because they're just like bodies having to figure it out. For example, I, as a circumcised person, only recently realized that I should masturbate with lube. And it's like completely changed my whole. It's so weird. It's like everyone I think knew that. I didn't.
I think it just depends on who you are and what you like and what you do. Like, I
Well,
actually
just
don't,
the
I
sort
don't
of
like
like-
that.
What?
I don't prefer it actually.
Oh, lube?
Yeah. I guess I'm like having a moment where I'm like, I don't really feel comfortable talking about all this on the pod. But I guess I'm just like, everyone's different. You find what you want. And I think like
Yeah,
there are
true.
differences in circumcisions too.
But isn't there sort of like a lore around if you're circumcised, you should use lube? Is that made up in my head?
No, I think
Okay.
there are some people. This is what I also am trying to describe. Like some people are circumcised to a degree that there's like no movement, and I think you can't masturbate without lubrication. But some people's circumcisions are not as like tight.
Like a toy guy.
And so you still have movement of the skin as though you know what I mean? Like I think there is a range of how much skin is removed and how tight it becomes.
So sometimes you do definitely need
I think there are people who like cannot masturbate without lube.
Wow, dicks are so diverse. But they are. You know what I mean? Like when you think of like a bunch of dicks in a row, it's like they are all very different.
Yeah, there's a pretty big range.
There's such a range. Here we are talking about literally like that as human species we decided to cut some of them.
Yeah.
Like even outside of the circumcision, there's such a range. And they're just so dumb looking.
Yeah.
Like
so
picturing
stupid.
a bunch of people's dicks in a row is like
And they
LOL.
seem so silly. It is like interesting that so many other animals have interior.
It's like,
penises.
why is it hanging outside?
Yeah, it's
where
just,
it
like,
hurts.
in the way?
It's really, really weird. Like I do think when like an alien were to scan a human body, like a person with a penis's body, they'd be like, it's all making sense except that part right there,
Yeah, that's
where
like
there's
the
like
most
a
sensitive
sack
part.
hanging out that they're constantly covering and being like, don't touch, and like freaking out about. And for some reason, some of them have cut ones and other not cut ones. Like even culturally, it's super weird.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say when it comes to the sensitivity thing, like, and this is just my own personal evaluation, is you mentioned fingertips being another area that's
And
like-
lips.
and
Hot.
lips, which are super sensitive, but it's
Similar
the
neurons.
comparison of like, yeah, just because your fingertips are super sensitive doesn't mean they're always pleasurable, right? And same with your
Yeah.
lips, like, so that's why I think they're like, just because the foreskin has so many more so much more sensitivity doesn't mean it's necessarily exclusively for pleasure.
Fair. That's
But-
fair.
So it's hard to know. I mean, that goes back to the thing I feel like we've been saying in like every episode recently. Like, you just want to know what somebody else's physical experience of life is.
But I think it is
You'll
interesting.
never
as-
know.
It's pretty interesting as two circumcised cis gay men that I'm like, I wouldn't circumcise my kid. It's kind of interesting. I feel like circumcision is going to decrease. Like
I think so too. Yeah.
Even after doing all this research, we're sometimes reading, I guess, dated studies that it could be somewhat beneficial to STI transmission. I still am like, no. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have it in me in the early months of my kid's life to do anything that causes them to bleed or something, rather than just like in the future be like, hey bud, gotta wash the foreskin. Like it just seems like an easier conversation than to like do
but
it.
our kid's probably gonna have to have that moment where they're like, why yours different than mine?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's so cute. I would love to. Oh my god, I just want a kid to have the sex talk and to go to like Harry Styles concerts. Even though I know I said
Harry Styles
that
won't
we
be
didn't
cool
like
then.
the album.
Oh yeah, absolutely canceled.
Kidding. But some people were really mad.
I also feel like you put those words in my mouth. I've listened to 2 songs.
Okay, fine.
Okay, and it's
yeah, and
actually
even
Greg's
when we
opinion.
listen to it, I'd be like, bad, eh? Bad, eh, Mitch?
they'd be like-
bad, eh? And you're
Because
like,
I love the main like song that's popular on TikTok.
yeah, why
and
did I
stuff.
do that?
Because you just wanted to take me down with you.
No, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I
have to
get
listen to the
really,
whole thing.
I get like, I love pop culture. And I just want to be like a part of the like things. And when they don't click for me, I get so frustrated.
Like you feel extra mad because you're like, I wish I want to like.
And
it
like,
so
I
can
wish I
experience
loved
that.
this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because I like love being a part of those moments. Same with Billie Eilish. I've just like never, ever
I
been
like
able.
Billie Eilish, but I never got obsessed.
See, this is the thing about both of them. I love their personalities. I love them. It's the music. It's the freaking out about the music. Like when everyone like full fledged. I remember Melissa McCarthy like crying because she like met Billie Eilish because her music meant so much to her. I was like, Melissa McCarthy. I'm like, when I listen to like her music, I'm like, she's whispering and like, why am I doing this? The 2 biggest pop stars. Kids are gonna come for me. Let's move on. Foreskin. If their kids are still listening. Yeah, no, I do feel like I feel like it's gonna absolutely decrease. Even though I do think from a scientific perspective, there's been some weird medical community defenses of it, I feel like in the past. But even doing this research and being circumcised, I couldn't help but leave without thinking, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah,
there's not
personally, that
enough
would
information to
justify
it for me.
And there's like alternatives to any of the current concerns there are. It seems as though there's like alternatives, as in like hygiene and safe sex.
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like it's, I don't know. To me, it does. And I know some people feel really extreme, and I don't want anyone like this is coming from someone who's circumcised. Like I do think it is genital mutilation. That does sound like really extreme, and I know when something becomes so culturally normal, that can sound like you could feel attacked for having your kid circumcised, but obviously it's so normalized. But I do think more and more people are just going to be like, I don't see why we need to do that.
Yeah. And there, you just can't escape in the scientific literature the constant sort of like, it could be a preventative for HIV transmission outside of the recent study you said that is studied in Ontario, which isn't my point.
Right.
The point that these research articles are saying are parts of the world where HIV transmission is high and sex education and quality of life is not matching the same like heights of that disease, that they think maybe male circumcision is part of a wider solution for HIV transmission. But it is like really intense, but like the WHO like said that.
Yeah,
2007.
no, that makes sense.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of
It's hard to
interesting.
like, when you're
It's
trying
like,
to balance
whoa,
against
yeah.
like the advice of medical professionals,
Yeah.
some of which you probably say no, and some of which you probably say yes, and then on this world stage, it's
Yeah.
like it is a totally different view when you live in a
Yeah.
place like Canada. There and I think that should be the perspective. Is like, what are the risk factors? Like anything. But it is unfortunate. Like to me, I just think if there are other solutions to the risk factor beyond like
Which there
like changing
definitely
someone's
are.
body
Yeah.
physically and like surgically, then it seems like those should be the primary like means of attacking those problems. And then if the problem still exists in any part of the world, then maybe that becomes a secondary solution.
It's so weird how sex is like so visceral to us all, and then it's so important if you think about it from the point of like movies and television and culture. Like we're always like sex, like sex sells. But then it also is so linked to like politics, and even thinking about like how radical it was growing up gay for like someone to be like, I don't think politics should be in the bedroom. You know what I mean? Like that was such a woke thought. It's like, no shit. Like it's so weird that like sex is also like something that is so controlled, and even circumcision by like politics, by like culture. It's like so weird, because we're almost like our consciousness episode last week. As humans, we can't ever like get
weird.
sex outside of that. And then there's all these justifications through disease. You know, that's like, I think how some conservative people would justify sex as bad. Like, you know, there's risks attached to it.
Yeah.
Like it's so interesting because it's like you can't deny that. But for some reason that leads people down this path of like
controlling other people's bodies.
Yeah, and then like for some reason doing all the wrong things, being like, let's not talk about it, let's not educate.
Yeah, true.
It's like it becomes so muddy
Yeah.
and complicated and intense.
Yeah, it's just, I'm trying to think like through the path of like, obviously a lot of it comes from religious beliefs too.
Yeah.
But then you wonder like, okay, historically were these religious beliefs with the intention or to protect like
At
disease
the time,
spread?
when there weren't
But
condoms. Or,
I mean, even
or
like
something.
straight back to the Bible, it's like people like
straight back
to the source.
Bible.
There's like shame about nudity and stuff. Like
I did not think you were gonna say Bible. Like when you said straight, I thought you were talking about a straight person, and even straight back to the Bible.
I guess I mean.
So
like,
what are you saying? I'm
after
curious.
they like ate the apple, God made them aware of their like nudity, and they were ashamed, and then they needed like clothes and stuff. So there's like even this belief in this, and like I don't remember the Bible that well, so I'm sorry if I'm mistelling this story. But
never read it, but think I should.
yeah, I know. Sometimes I'm like, the
Yeah.
devil was the good one. I'm not joking, because sometimes you're like, he was like
Oh, I
offering
love
them
that.
knowledge.
I would
like, the
not be
truth.
surprised if I read the Bible and at the end was like, the devil's good. God is so annoying.
He's so controlling. Honestly.
Oh my God. If we weren't canceled for Harry Styles, we're canceled from some people for that.
And surely they're not listening to this podcast. But
No,
I guess
there
I mean,
are Midge. Religious
Oh.
people definitely listen to this podcast.
oh, I know, but I mean, like, I'm assuming the religious people who listen to this podcast are able to laugh at religious
I
takes.
think some people really do get offended when you make fun of God objectively, even if they're not that religious. In my
Yeah, that's
experience.
fair. I
Like,
don't
just
mean to-
ripped on
I'm
God.
sorry if I offended
Yeah,
you.
that's all I'm saying.
I
said
grew
it.
up
said it.
Catholic, so
Yeah.
I have like a lot of feelings about
Yeah,
it, and I
yeah.
went to Catholic school and I had
Yeah.
to go to church, and so I
Yeah.
feel like I have a bit of a like.
It's interesting because I feel
Complex.
I grew up like in a United Church, which was way less intense, and I have noticed that in our like argumentative philosophy 20s, you really rebelled against religion.
Oh,
like,
totally.
really
yeah.
hard.
I was like, I'm an atheist,
Like,
and
yeah.
like reading and listening to all
intensely.
these things.
Whereas I was a
yeah.
little bit like, it's not that bad because I
Yeah.
never had the same.
I've
thing.
definitely come around. Like, I have full respect for anyone who's religious. Like, yes, on the one hand, I think like religious institution can be in many ways like very oppressive and very problematic
and leads to circumcision.
yeah,
Interesting.
totally.
We can't deny
and
that.
looking at like America right now, seeing like fundamentalist like Christians like trying to control women's
so
bodies,
sad.
trying to like take away rights from individuals, trying to like literally like religious priests coming out and saying like trans people should be killed. You know what I mean? Like we should exterminate certain kinds of groups. Like, so there's a lot there. But I know lots of religious people in my life who are actually
Yeah.
beautiful, amazing, kind, giving people.
Some of, I must say, objectively the best people I know
Sure.
are
Yeah.
religious.
Yeah. So it's not
funny.
it's not an attack on a belief in God,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
for me anyway.
Yeah.
And
But and I think if someone is circumcising their kid for religious reasons, I kind of am like, that's okay, because I can't ever relate to that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not
but
one to
because
say.
it's like a level of impacting someone's bodily autonomy and actually like surgically changing something. I don't think I would feel that was right if someone's religion got to choose some other aspect of someone's life. Like, can someone's religion say, "Well, I actually don't think homosexuality should exist, so I should give my kid pills to change them"?
This is that religion part of you. That's so funny. I'm like, that was intense. That's a good point.
Well,
you have them stocked and
no,
ready.
because there's people in this world who believe those things.
See, my opinion is like, I don't think circumcision is bad enough to warrant me being ever able to tell someone who's doing it for religious reasons to do it or not.
Fair.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that your point was real good. Honestly, I was like, okay, if you go down that path, you're right. That's intense. That's
It's
what my
finding
issue
the
with religion
line.
is.
Everyone has to find their own, but it's kind of reminds me of like the debate on like vegetarianism or veganism. Like some people are like, no, if you partake in the system that feeds you meat, like you are a murderer, it is unethical, it is this.
Yeah.
And then some vegetarians or vegans are a little like softer on it.
Yeah.
And like, I'm doing it for this reason. I understand how it interacts with other people, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's similar to circumcision. Like some people are literally like, you are mutilating that child and it should be illegal.
Wow. Yeah.
And other people are like, no, but I understand it's intertwined with religious practice
Yeah.
and or beliefs and traditions and those kind of things,
Yeah.
and or medical information. But we all know sometimes science can be intertwined into like upholding the status quo of
sure.
supporting like groups that have their beliefs wanting to spread.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
who knows? That was really intense to end on that.
No,
I'm sorry.
I think it's fair, and things are intense right now. I mean, as we all know, I'm in a bad mood, and I'm just like, I just want to say, America, you're fucking broken. Like, I'm just
Honestly,
it's
I have
really
to stop
bad.
caring about America.
I've
I'm
stopped-
sorry.
I'm sorry, America.
I can't think about you anymore.
And I'm not saying that
That it's unfixable.
I'm like, that sounds really harsh, but it's like, and Canada is absolutely flawed. We have so much shit that I need to be thinking about and dealing with because I live here. It's just very distracting to be near a country that is so broken because it's so
And I think for
intense.
me, I am afraid of Canada becoming like America,
and
which it kind of is.
We always get influenced. Yeah.
And I know
It's
there's
so
so many
sad.
amazing, beautiful Americans out there.
Yes,
probably
you're a
listening
huge,
to this too.
huge
Yeah,
country
there's
full of
so many people.
so many people, huge population,
But-
and that's maybe part of the issue. But it's really
Sometimes
sad.
it's very disturbing, yeah.
Yeah, like day after day, and it's just like
I know. I just hope there's like.
some of those politicians.
I don't
are
know.
Psycho.
Hopefully there is like incremental change, and we're just like in the dark part now. And
Yeah.
I don't know, but the fear is like just that
Yeah.
it keeps going one direction, and I don't know.
I don't know. I don't even know if it keeps going. It's just. It seems so simple when you look at these absolutely like evil Republican politicians. Like it's kind of, it gets so hard when you're watching. And you're like, it just seems so obvious. It's like they even have the most incredibly sick posts after like tragic incidents that are so
They're just like how
menacing and evil that it's like, how is it still working?
But I think like, you know, and I'm sure all the Americans listening to this right now do not disagree. You know what I mean? Like that's the frustrating part. Like I think in my mind, I think I feel similar to how many Americans feel, which is like, how are these people real? And like, I don't know. I know this has nothing to do with foreskin, but I guess it's related to those issues that are kind of
No, it's related to like the like
political,
institutions
religious,
having power
intertwined
and stuff.
But good luck, America.
I know it's honestly maybe part of my bad mood. You know what I
Maybe.
mean? I need to focus on our
I hope
Canadian
everyone's
issues.
doing okay. Yeah, sometimes it's need to step back, but I hope you guys make it.
And so for those Canadians in Ontario, Ontarians listening, so we're not going to vote for Doug Ford,
Yes,
right? Because
please.
that's our really depressing thing to deal with. It's like, where do we start with that one? Let's just talk about him using all your money to build a highway that we have studied and know
And
is
like the
not
vast
going
majority
to
of people
help.
don't want.
Vast majority of people don't want to help. He's going to absolutely obliterate wetlands, which are some of the reasons why we are proud to be Ontarians. Not to mention that Ontario is one of the greenest provinces in the world when we look at the world scale due to our energy sector. Based on past politicians doing a lot of work, we got pretty much all of our power from hydro and wind and nuclear. And now, for some reason, this Doug Ford and his friends are wanting to change that and make us go backwards and be way worse to the environment so that they can all make a little bit more money.
I really hope everyone strategically votes. I know it's
Yeah.
like really frustrating, and we're really lucky because we live, I think, in an area that we are.
I'm like, I can vote NDP if I want.
Yeah, we get to vote who we actually want. Because
Although
it's
the
like there's
liberal
no-
$1 transit thing, why is no one ever talking about this? This is
yeah.
a genius idea. After the pandemic, we need people back on public transit. The liberal government's saying that they are going to make it for at least a year $1 for every single aspect of public transportation,
Including Go.
Brilliant idea. Remember when Doug Ford's was $1 beer?
Yeah.
Like that's a
This
poison
seems
to
more
society.
useful. Yeah.
This is the opposite.
Either way, even if you're not Canadian, just know don't vote for conservatives.
And also, it's like letting you know we have the same issues. This is what we're saying about America. Like we have to focus on ourselves because we have our own issues and we have to figure them out for ourselves. But we're always distracted by the intensity, and we know it's intense, and we feel for you.
And it's easy to get distracted,
Yeah.
by like how intense like those issues are. I know you just said that exact same thing when it hit me, and I was like, yeah, it's because like an issue like gun control. I'm like, well, we don't really have that same problem here, but it's so intense that you look at it and you're like, okay, obviously my mental energy is going into that.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
And we are just gonna say that we are cut, and some people try to grow back their foreskin, and I didn't want to get into it because it's really complicated medically, but it's really intense. And so maybe we'll do another episode,
Part 2.
that's called Foreskin. Can you grow it back?
Yeah. Okay.
Whew, okay.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Pause.
See you later.